Hello!
Welcome to Gen Z Meets World Podcast. I'm Aeshah.
I'm Ahmad.
And today we'll be talking about stage fright, which is also known as performance anxiety.
I've never heard of that term.
I
Hinders.
personally have never either until I looked up, because talking about things like stage fright, I've always felt like you cannot simply. I mean, there are some things that first of all, anytime we're talking about any of these kind of topic, it's like you should be taking it with the knowledge that we may not be the most knowledgeable
Regarding the matter.
Yeah, it's just that often we're just sharing our experiences, our observations, our thoughts, our ideas, and wanted to hear what you guys think of it. So but you still should refer to and that's why we often leave the links and the sources of the things that we read up from. So but before we talk about this, before now, I looked up about stage fright to see what is it exactly, what people
what defines as stage fright specifically.
So they say that it's also known as performance anxiety, and I'm like, oh, okay,
I mean,
interesting.
that term fits, but never heard of being used before.
So stage fright, also known as performance anxiety, it says here is that is when your body reacts to the situation of being, okay, here's a proper paragraph, quote unquote, being the center of attention and having all eyes on you can be stressful. Your body reacts to the situation in much the same way as it would if you were being attacked. Your body's fight or flight mechanism kicks in, which is why symptoms of stage fright are similar to symptoms that occur when you are in real danger. Isn't that interesting? Because you when you're being in the center of attention, you kind of think that you are it makes you stress, and at the same time your body detects it
as a danger.
Because you're stressed out, so it's danger. So
and stressed out and this fear of other something else is, it's a very similar situation
as how if you are being attacked. So thus, the performance anxiety symptoms may include racing pulse and rapid breathing, dry mouth and tight throat, trembling hands, knees, lips and voice, sweaty and cold hands. I feel like as we're reading this list, both of us are feeling I never know
nausea.
how to pronounce this, but nausea?
Nausea. No.
I know nauseous.
I know nauseous.
Yeah.
So
nausea. Nausea.
Usually I would pronounce it as nausea.
nausea.
Yeah.
and an uneasy feeling in your stomach. That's when they usually see butterflies. Vision changes. That must be vision changes must be when you're really in it. So so those are the symptoms. They're causes and treatments and etc. But so that's basically it. So when were you first of all, have you ever experienced stage fright?
Definitely so.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So how do you want to approach this? Do you want to talk perhaps on your experience? When did you have you ever when did you what's your memory of the first time you experienced a stage fright, and was it the first time that you were in the center of attention?
I think it, at least from what I remember of what happened then, it wasn't when I was first at the center of attention.
Right.
The first I remember
let's define
being
center of attention. Is it just being
presenting
on a stage? Because we're
stage,
still talking about stage fright, so performance specifically. Okay.
So specifically when I'm on stage, the first that I remember being on stage, that will be during the Enjoying English program that we participated in. And so but then I don't remember having that stage fright. I was,
how old were you then?
4. No, not 4. That was already,
I don't think you were 4,
but 5 or 6.
Okay.
It was 2009, was it? If it was 2009, then it must be. I was 6.
You were 6.
I was 6. Right. 4 is a different story. So where was I?
Your experience then.
Yes. So I remember just being excited, but it could just be you forget about things. But at the same time, when I look back at the things regarding that, I don't see myself feeling that, at least like a strong stage fright.
Plus, Ahmad, when he was his memory, he remembers, like when he's younger, he remembers more of the bad experiences. So chances are, if you were like very anxious and etc., you'd remember.
I remember it. Yeah. So
chances are not.
But then the one that I remember having was I cannot remember the year specifically. It was probably 2015.
What happened?
When I was giving a speech at the National University of Malaysia, Universiti Kebangsaan UKM. That was
picture, but then I don't remember the year.
Yeah,
but
I had the year in mind. It's about then. Yeah, so that was like the first that I remember having a stage fright.
Was that the first time that you performed on a stage after the Enjoying English program?
If I'm not mistaken, we did have
short performances like when you performed Nasheed and etc. But that was the first time that you gave a speech. Since then, okay.
And it kind of makes sense that it's different compared to the Enjoying English one, because during the Enjoying English, I was reading an article from a paper.
So this one, you are actually, this is the first time that you are talking.
Yes,
spontaneously,
and it was like, I was like given a hint sort of that I was going to be presenting that night, but I wasn't really sure. Was my father teasing me? And then suddenly, yes, I was. But then it was not about what he said before. It was about an entirely different topic. So I was like, I have to like craft things out. And the picture of me then, I was like literally
hugging yourself.
During that time, that was the first that I remember having a stage fright. And then after that, stage fright can kind of become a normal thing.
When you first of all, when you have had like television appearances before that speech, did you have any stage fright then?
Oh yes, I forgot to include that in my. I remember I was more nervous than during the English program. I think it's because of the mindset that it's like,
you are more nervous during the television appearance compared to
Enjoying English.
Okay,
it's like
Enjoying English was the program,
the first one. So television appearance. So I remember then I was more nervous compared to that that incident, but it wasn't as much as nerve-wracking as the one in 2015 or so.
The spontaneous
hopefully
speech.
That year is right.
So
because I think the main thing is because, first of all, I think that's the only reason. There's nobody there. You just see the cameras there, and it's less daunting because when you see all the people looking at you, just staring at you, waiting for you to say the next word, it feels like they're expecting something. When you look at the camera,
try to compare. You had several television appearances. The earlier ones was when there's no one there, just the host. Then we had a more recent one where there was a crowd. How did it compare between the two? Were you more nervous during the? Do not take the one where you performed alone. Like take the one that you performed with us, because that's where the only very difference is the presence of the crowd.
I think.
Are you more nervous?
I did not have much stage fright problems during the one with the crowd.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because I was older and I already
perhaps
grew.
Then it was actually the reason why you had you felt less nervous was more because of the fact that when you're in the television appearance, it feels more like you're having a conversation with the host.
Yeah.
And less of a presentation.
Yes.
Maybe it's that,
That's also possible.
So the presence of the crowd doesn't really, So that's why you're more nervous during speech.
Because when I was when we were in that show in 2018, we weren't communicating with the audiences at all.
You
almost
communicating
like
with the host.
Perhaps the audience are like not interacting, reacting. But then we're not interacting with it's like they're in this
except for the question and answer session.
But then otherwise it's like they're in a separate dimension.
They're just watching us.
it's like we have access to the cameras, hidden cameras on the TV, and we could see people watching from their homes, basically like that.
Okay.
So I guess that's good way to that's a good theory.
So my experience with stage fright, when I the earlier, like the first time I presented in public was I was 6, somewhere then, for school. So I was in preschool. So they had this like speech day at the end of the year, and so they have a performance, I was 6. They have a performance, and so they had this like group of people. Like in my classroom, each classroom makes a performance. My classroom has a performance. So they select a number of students from the class to do this performance. I was one of the ones select. They have a line of like a bunch of, I can't remember, like say 10 for example, background singers, and then they had a main singer. They were performing some songs, I think in Arabic, about teachers or something. I can't remember exactly. I think we're talking about like we're like small children, but we're like excited to learn kind of. So they have the background singers and the main singer. So I was part of the background singer, and then eventually things happened, and I was chosen to do them because the first singer got chicken pox. The second one during practice fainted because she was fasting, so they were like wanting to look for someone else to take the center stage. No one wanted to volunteer. They couldn't like pick a person they liked. Both of the people they liked had problems, so they asked for someone to volunteer, and then I was like, I'm volunteering. And then when during practice, I had no problems at all. I was just reciting everything. But then during the performance itself, I actually cannot remember exactly how I was feeling. But one thing about me then, my mindset then, I remember that talking for me had always been, how do I say this? Not a communication in a way. Like I've always thought,
Right.
there's like so many recordings of myself just talking to myself, to no one, to people, and I'm not even looking at people, and etc. So that action is just talking. So there's no difference between performing and talking with people and talking with myself. It is all just an action of talking, speaking out your thoughts.
Or at least just making sounds.
So I think it's more of a speaking out my thoughts kind of thing.
But in the sense of a song,
because I'm having the song in my head, so I'm like voicing
I guess
the things that's going on in my head.
When you have a song stuck in your head, you just play it out.
There's some music, I just hum it. So it's just like, so there was no difference between performing in public and talking. So no, I don't think I had stage fright then, but I can't remember for a fact. But then I don't think so. But fast forward later, eventually I started to realize that talking with people is not the same as just talking. There's like a communication going on, there's responses. You're actually supposed, like, how people react to what you say actually depends, like, is somewhat affected. There's many factors, but somewhat affected by how you talk to them. So that was when I think I started to get stage fright, because I realized that when people look at you, there's like judgment, so I was like,
analyzing your
So then I started getting a lot of stage fright. Like I started like shaking and very, very nervous.
I think that might also be not like exactly, but then like somewhat also the reason why I did not really feel much when I was younger. So it's kind of like took it lighter, because even if back in 2015, if you were to give me a paper to read in front of a crowd, I might still be having a stage fright. At the very least, just hug myself. But then before that, I took things more simpler, and like you don't really see the impact of like what you do to the other people's perception.
Which like like now you start to think about like during like public performances, you think about, like, first of all, everyone's looking at you, like, but why is it scary that everyone's looking at you, and why was it not scary when we were younger that everyone's looking at you? First of all, for you, I think because when you're just reading that paper, that article, you're just reading it out, and like when you were younger, you kind of like it when people when you receive attention.
Yeah.
But then, like, now, you still, because chances are you still have similar traits, so perhaps you still like receiving attention, but now it's more daunting because you know that there's this judgment, yes, and it matters how you perform. So
rather than you could just do anything and people do not mind, because so, and in a way, when you're a child, when you can do anything, people don't mind because you're a child. So it's also quite true that you do not need to have that fear when you were younger.
Yeah. So for me, like, when I was younger, it was I didn't realize that talking is not the same. I didn't realize that voicing out my thoughts is not the same as talking, and not the same as performing or presenting in front of the crowd. So when I didn't even realize that people looking at me didn't give, like, it wasn't like I didn't realize that I'm getting attention, and I didn't realize anything. It's like I'm just reciting.
Yeah.
There's complete lack of awareness of the public. So yeah, it's almost like the crowd isn't even there. The crowd just happens to be there. I didn't realize they're looking at me. I didn't realize there's an attention to me.
It's kind of like the one in the show where you have the crowd there on the TV show when you have the crowd there. It's kind of they're just there, but they're not
for you
involved.
Yeah. So, but then when I grew older, then I realized that actually, there is how you act affect things, how you perform affect things, and then now as you grew, for me personally, as I grew even older, I realized that the things I'm presenting, because then it's okay. Now I realize the things I'm presenting, like, it matters how I word. Like, when we're slightly younger, we just realize, these people, there's this judgment that's going on. Now you realize that how you word things can affect how a person perceives the things that's worded. Not just you, not just your performance, but what you say. And so if you word things wrongly, you might give a wrong message.
Yes, and people might misunderstand. And
on one hand is, you just have the people going angry, like, you said this, but then the one that's more like grave,
when it's misleading.
Yes, when you give information that's like people take like, which is one of the things that I think like initially hindered me from doing this podcast, because I'm like, like, there's no crowd in front of us,
so we can't see the response.
Yeah, and like, it's like it shouldn't be really nerve-wracking, but then you're still thinking, like, you don't really think much. For me personally, I don't really think much about the judgment of like how I'm acting. I'm also thinking about how people perceive the things we're saying, like, will we be misleading people? Will we, So initially you didn't have stage fright. Then you started having stage fright, which we assume the reason is because you start to realize, the weight of the situation. That's when you have stage fright. Would you say that you now, from you then, like when you initially had stage fright, are you better at handling the stage fright?
I think in most cases you will be at least a bit better. No, like people will
not
still be.
Yes, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Right. So, but okay, then yes, I do believe I'm getting better. Unfortunately, I feel a lot better. Which, in a way, when it comes to stage fright, I feel what you feel should matter more. Somewhat.
Sorry?
What you feel about your stage fright, like what you feel about if whether or not you are better at handling stage fright, it's better because most of it's in your head. So if you feel like things are fine,
you'd have less stage fright.
Less stage fright.
I get what you mean.
It means that you are less afraid of things, or like you can somehow.
So you're saying that you think that now you do,
Yes.
you can handle it better. B, now that you can handle it better, it makes the stage fright like less, like it lowers tempers down the stage fright at any rate, because you're not overthinking too much.
Yes,
because overthinking is
that
also
was one of the things that caused me to have stage fright when I was younger, because I was overthinking, like, what if I forget this, what all those things.
And
so
when you're
now,
overthinking, you think that you're not overthinking.
Yes. And so now,
but then sometimes you're like, maybe you are not, but go on.
So one of the things I think that helped with not developing
calming down the stage fright.
Developing resistance.
It's okay. We'll just use calming down
the stage fright. It would be to, first of all, when you're more confident, you will in general feel there's less things for you to be worried about when you're confident that things are going to be going to go well, even if you actually do not perform well. But when you feel that you're performing well, that fear is no longer there. So
or at least it's like reduced.
So I think that's the main thing that helped. And then, because if I were to like head on combat the stage fright itself, I think it might even make it worse.
Well, it depends on how your strategy.
But like things that I thinking what I would first do automatically if I were to consciously try to combat it directly, I think I will probably just make it worse, at least for that.
So
for that time.
Basically what you're saying is that you definitely now have like less stage fright.
Yes.
And how you handled it is by calming down the overthinking. But when you do have stage fright, alongside hugging yourself, what else do you do to calm yourself down? Like then and there, when you're like actually there. Like our father, he is like a public speaker, etc. And like everyone always see him on stage and etc. Like when he's a businessman, he's presenting his marketing stuff, and he's a head boy at one time, so he's always presenting throughout his life. But until the end of his life, he still had stage fright, which might surprise lots of people.
Because he looks
super confident
and contained. So
and he did get better and better over time. But he's often holding the rostrum, or because some situation is like more daunting for him, and some situations like less. So sometimes he doesn't really feel that much stage fright. But during some presentations, like there was this one time he was presenting in front of a person he really highly respected for years, and he's not supposed to be presenting to him. He's supposed to present to
that person is supposed to present to him.
So he was very nervous about it, that his knees were literally shaking, so he had to hide his how rostrum has that cave in at the back. He literally put his legs inside it to hide his knees because they were shaking. So but those are some ways that some people calm themselves down, or at least he's like, because for him it's like he doesn't want to present the symptoms.
So put all of it somewhere else.
So hide what's seen, push everything where people can't see, and then he's like, he copes with it. So how do you usually
I remember when I was young, I mentioned about how I overcame like nervousness. Was by shaking my what I wrote. I think it was in my blog. I wrote, I shook my hands like Michael Jackson. When he performs. Sometimes it's like so that's something. I think it's like also like directing the flow to some like focusing on.
I can imagine.
So you let your hand focus on the
movement of that tremble.
I was thinking more like the fright.
So
your hand is focusing on the fright, and so it distributes the thing. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it works. It might not even work, but then
no, it may, because I remember.
No, sorry, it might not even work that way.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's sort of like compartmentalization. You let this thing run, but it runs somewhere else. you focus on this thing, your brain's still processing both.
It's like when sometimes our elder sister, Kak Aiman, when she's in pain, she will be singing something out loud just so that she could so she could focus on the singing, and then eventually the pain is gone, and she's like back to normal.
Because pain, I mean, sidetrack, but because pain often it's the initial pain that you receive is like that perceived pain that you still feel, even though that it's no longer as painful, which is why it is important to inject those painkillers during operation at the right time, or like even if it's not operation, like you had a very serious injury, at the right time, so that you do not have that prolonged trauma of like that perceived pain. Sidetrack. So okay, when you shook your hands at Michael Jackson, because that's what you wrote when you were younger, did you believe that Michael Jackson also had stage fright, and so he shook his hand to calm himself down?
I might. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if I did that because Michael Jackson did that. But then I might end up theorizing it that way. Like, when I did that,
it's because you're nervous.
Because I'm nervous.
So
and then
Michael
when
Jackson,
I think back, maybe that's why Michael Jackson did it. Because I had a lot of those. Like, because I did this, maybe other people did this because of the same reason as well.
How did I? Okay. When you mentioned the shaking hands, like sort of like compartmentalization, it's not exactly the same situation. It wasn't a stage fright, but I remember when I was feeling nervous, because we met with Tan Sri Musa Hassan, who I really looked up to for years, like I mentioned in the role model episode. The first time we met him, we were having like this tea, like morning
lunch.
What do you call it? Like morning tea. I think that exists. So we were having
we could just create the word if it doesn't exist.
We were having like a morning tea, a tea in the morning if it doesn't exist. So it was like the first. Okay, it wasn't the first time I met him. Because the first time I met him was the day before that. No, the first time I saw him was during he was having his presentation. I attended his talk. We met him. Like, you were there too. But we didn't meet. We just attended it. And I was like, I'm in the same hall as Musa. So anyway, we were having the morning tea. It was like, not just I meet him, but I'm like, having a conversation with him. I am like, because we're all on the table, and we're all having a conversation around the table, so I am included in the conversation. So I was like this, like, no, not real. And so I was so nervous, and I was shaking, I was trembling, and I was like, my hands couldn't stop shaking, and I was like holding a fork because we're like eating. And then when I placed the fork on the table, like on my plate to make myself stop shaking, like it literally like crackled, like, and I tried to calm down, I couldn't, and I tried to hold my, I was just trembling.
It's like when I was younger, I almost often had like just randomly my
would shiver,
my arm would shiver,
and
really
it
I could
just stop.
you just wouldn't stop, and it's like you try to hold something, and it's like and you try to contain it inside something, and it's like the whole entire thing moves.
So I couldn't contain myself. So what I did was, like, I tried all kinds of strategy during that half an hour or something we were eating, until eventually what I did was I focused all of my shivers and trembles onto my leg, because we're at the table, so no one can see my leg area. So I just like purposely shook my knees.
It's
that like it's like sort of like the compartmentalization.
So you could bring all, even though your knees would shake like violently, but nobody could see it anyway.
I mean, I don't know how does it actually work, because that's probably psychology, and probably you can stop your hand or whatever. But that was like how I coped with that. But that wasn't stage fright. But it may apply, because it applied for you, it applied for our father, so it may actually apply. But how I cope with stage fright. For many years, I feel like I don't. I'm just present with the fear. I'm like, bad, but just present bad. But then eventually what I realized, okay, you know what? What's interesting? Okay, so yes, for a long time, I don't really know how to cope with the stage fright. so if people look at me performing and they think that I look like I'm just confident, actually no, I'm not. Like I'm literally, I feel like my voice trembles. I don't know if you can hear it, but I hear my voice trembling, you know. So maybe it's overthinking, but anyway. So I don't really cope with it. I just try to get through it, which, you know, may be a thing that's bad. But then now I'm realizing that if I get into the thing that I'm presenting, because usually I present things I'm passionate about, once I get into it, then I kind of lose a bit of that. Maybe it's also because I'm not actively overthinking.
Yeah, because you're distracted. The passion talking about the thing that...
Yeah. Once I am passionate about it, like, I forget about social norms. Nowadays, you know, we have, like, because of COVID, we have a different form of presentation.
Yeah.
Where we are not just presenting on stage or for a TV appearance, which is kind of similar, but now we perform like on these online things, which is kind of similar to TV appearances, but also different, because sometimes, yes, it is just, you're just recording this thing and etc. like now. But sometimes it is like you kind of see these little figures, you know, they're actively watching you, you see them, you know. So how does that affect? Have you presented, I mean, have you presented?
Yeah,
I was thinking you haven't. Have you?
I haven't.
You have, so how was that for you?
It was definitely a very different experience. Like, in fact, I won't even put it the same as TV. You know, having that in mind, because it's weird. You're in a different condition. You're like on a chair, looking at the screen. Because you're talking, but you're not. Yeah, so because when you're on the TV, you're talking to the person.
Yeah.
You don't talk to the camera.
To the host. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking to the host.
Yeah.
And so this is, you're actively talking to through the screen.
It's like this virtual person.
Yes.
Who's
so
real? But is he real? I guess it's sort of like that confusion that we mentioned in the physical versus virtual communities episode. Like, there's that confusion, like your brain. There's the thing, I can't remember what was it exactly called, but it was something like Zoom exhaustion or something, named after the application Zoom, which people often use for video conferences, where like when you do too many Zoom meetings, a lot of people actually like get exhausted by it because of several reasons. First of all, that confusion of like, you're interacting, but are you really this like a video that's like, you know,
it's like the whole where you're moving, but you're reading, and your eyes are like part of your brain is confused. Are you moving? Are you not moving? Because your eyes are not seeing anything move.
Like in a, what do you call that?
In a car.
In a car.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
Motion sickness.
Motion sickness. Yeah. It's sort of like motion sickness, where you're confused. Yeah. I mean, different symptoms, but you know, like. Yeah. So, A, that. B, there's also the fact that this person's face is larger than life. Like the screen, when you see
not
the people,
all the time.
Yeah, not all the time. Sometimes they're small, but then, you know, sometimes they're like huge, and that kind of like
can be
it what do you call it? Magnifies that perception of being judged and perceived and watched. And then sometimes you have so many eyes looking at you directly, and you are looking at all of these many things itself. Like in a performance, they're kind of like more distanced. You know, this is like very close.
Yeah, that's another thing, because it's closer.
Yeah. The third
it's
thing,
like they're like far but close.
Yeah.
It's back to the whole confusion thing.
The third thing is because usually the laptop is placed close to you, it feels like an invasion of privacy. Because usually when you're talking, you don't sit that close. Like even this, like I usually have my laptop like far behind me, because
my laptop is about this distance.
Yeah, I dislike them being too close. But often people have it like closer, and you know, that's like weird. So, you know, but you're constantly having that close look with the person, so that
I think that the general distance of a laptop will probably be, I mean, because if you want to type it, it will probably be that like close.
You know, I don't like that. So that, like, having that different experience, like, definitely, what do you call it, stacks onto the whole stage fright, you know, because you still feel nervous because you're performing in public. But now you have all of these additional stuff. And
so you're worried about more things.
You're overthinking over more things, but B, also like things like the close-up thing, that's not even overthinking, that's just psychology, you know. So I guess it takes a different strategy to combat, you know.
And there may be other means that we do not think about now. Like we've talked about three was it?
What?
Like in real life? No, like versions of presenting.
Yeah. In real life,
public, and then there's on TV, and then online.
Yes, online. There's also like the recorded ones, like this, you know.
For me, recorded content is not at all daunting. Like people could even stream this live, and I do not know that this means streaming live.
You know
and
what?
It looks a
You're
good
saying
idea.
that now because you've been doing it for a while. Watch back our first episode. It's so amusing. It's just been like under a year, almost a year, but not there yet. Like
half a year plus.
Yeah, you know. We did like our opening was like, hello, welcome to like, and we're like talking
I did notice, like, you know, we're editing the sound. I'm like, the under the eins is getting faster and faster, and we're getting smooth. You know, it's
more natural.
It's more natural.
Then we're like conscious of like so many things. It's like, hell, do you know? You know, kind of like. So yeah.
But like it at the same time, it doesn't. I don't feel that. So I think it's just the it's something
I guess it's
more
like
subconscious.
You are conscious about it. You are thinking about them.
About trying
but
to
then
put
it
that.
Doesn't. The fright is not too big.
I don't think it leads to overthinking.
It leads to stage fright. You know.
Yeah.
You're doing the thinking, but you're not.
In fact, I don't think
you may be nervous, but you're not anxious yet.
I don't think the overthinking aspect is even there.
Like
there may be some.
Overthinking usually comes with anxious.
Yeah. So,
anxiety.
but then there's not much overthinking in general. So, for me, that recorded performance is much.
Did I finish
easier.
my thought about how I should combat? I'll just repeat it if I have said it. But then, like, basically, I guess that does come to show that what I realized that to overcome like stage fright for me personally is because I realized that when I am 100% fully conscious about how people are perceiving this performance or presentation, that is when I get most stage frightened, you know?
Stage frightened,
yeah.
Yes.
So, but when I start getting passionate about it, I'm just thinking about I'm thinking about the thing itself. But B, I'm also thinking about the best way to deliver the thing itself, which in some ways is part of what I'm overthinking about. But then I just get so passionate, so it is definitely the overthinking aspect that's like kind of like there, you know. So it is, how do you, alongside, if you are having like those physical symptoms, like those tremblings and etc., so ways to handle those. But then also to like calm down on the stage fright is like to calm down over the overthinking, which is very difficult, admittedly. But in some ways, sometimes you just have to
race through
the thing that you're facing. And like, yeah, you're going to have these thoughts. But then I feel like recently, as I start to really like understand that things happen, you know, because like, understand that the weight of the situation may be very, very, very heavy.
Yeah.
You know, but in the end, things happen in life. Kind of like I don't know how
it really
to
helps you
phrase
to
it.
overcome overthinking in a way.
Yeah.
Because you feel like, you know, if the less that you think about it, the less that you fuss about it, the less that you
overthink about it.
Yeah, overthink about it. I'm trying to find another word that's the less that you will overthink about it.
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
the less that you okay, sometimes when you're overthinking, sometimes you are kind of nitpicking on all of the little things, which definitely may impact. But as you are nitpicking those little things, you are creating more issues and problems.
Yes.
So it's not that easy to overcome the overthinking. And I'm like, don't really know how to exactly
Me neither.
say,
Yeah,
you know, how do you overcome the overthinking? But I think that's because it differs for different people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me recently, I realized that what I've been subconsciously doing is that when I'm presenting, because I focus a lot more on the actual deliverance of the subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at the way people are receiving the subject matter rather than anything else, you know. I just focus on, okay, is this person moved by this concept? Are they actually listening? What works for them? How is it that I act? In what way do I act? Is it that they, you know, look at me closer? Sometimes I'm like thinking, is that a bad reaction? Is that a good reaction? That's when the overthinking comes in, you know. But then I breeze through that one, but I focus more on that, you know, and I really try to minimalize on everything else. And I think it's one of these things that I read. They said that amongst the things that can help is like having like sort of like a routine before you start. Not exactly a routine that you follow all the time, you know, like the same actions, but like having a time before you present where you sit down with yourself and like kind of like just go through your thoughts and ideas and etc., you know. So what I do then is that amongst the things I do before I present is I make sure that I am satisfied with everything else, so that then I only focus on presenting my idea and my subject matter and my topic. So things like, for example, there was this one time when we were going to a congress in Johor, 2019. So I was like, okay, I want to present this topic. I want to convince people that this is important.
Yeah.
You know, I was to present something, I want people to believe it's important. So I thought of all of the other things like how do I want to present myself? I want to wear baju kurung because it's my identity. I want to wear my hijab this way because it's my identity. My script and more, I've read my script through many times. It is already good. I don't have a hard script, but you know, like basically what I'm going to say. I've done all of my research. I would do very in-depth research so that I know how to handle the thing. And then I only focus on, are people listening to this? Are people accepting this? How are people reacting to this? You know, like that's the only thing I focus on. And for me, it helps with the stage fright, you know, in a way. So yeah. But then I was actually still very nervous. But, you know.
That then, because I presented as well, I was also very nervous. And I presented twice.
Yeah. The first time you were like almost couldn't do it because you were very, very nervous.
But the second one, ironically, was... But
more spontaneous presentation?
Yes, because I was...
you just got the idea on the spot. It was like a congress where you can just go out and present. It was like a bunch of young people and then youth, that's the word. I was translating it from Malay, orang muda. It was like a bunch of youth and like you just present ideas kind of thing.
So when I just... You know,
spontaneously
had the idea and I just went to the stage and waited for the turn, of course. And then when they were asking like, okay, who else wants to go up? And I went there and I would talk and I was like, just move without any problem. And I think because
the
now
focus is just
on presenting, it's much like when you have that passion. Because it's the same thing. Yeah. The passion.
So you're not thinking about you.
Yes, and that's another thing. I find myself smoother without
you find yourself smoother. You find your presentation
my presentation smoother when I do not have a script or when like there's not much things for me to follow because sometimes I'm thinking about have I mentioned this, have I mentioned that, rather than...
And plus when you are reading a script, you are a lot more conscious about this performance rather than the presentation itself.
So
you know?
However, there are still times where I do strictly follow a script. Like recently I've been moderating programs, which...
It's hard for me. Actually, I did far better during when I do not follow the script. Like I have the script because, you know, I'm like, you have to read all these biodata, etc. But then the last one, it was kind of like a different format kind of thing. Like And then I eventually didn't even read the script anymore. I
Yeah.
was just saying things out from
There
memory.
are times.
That I didn't feel so nervous about it. I get less tongue tied. With online presentation, I get so tongue tied. I couldn't say things. I'm just trying to say Assalamualaikum, and that just comes out like. And then it sounds like I do not know Arabic, and I'm like, I know.
remember that happening last time. We were reciting one of the phrases, and you're like,
yeah, I couldn't read.
Yeah.
Like I get tongue tied. I don't get tongue. I get very nervous, and my voice trembles with like private presentation, or at least I think my voice tremble. But with online presentation, I get tongue tied.
I get tongue tied when I'm recording like videos with myself. I think
you are more conscious about the performance when you're recording a video of yourself.
Yeah.
Like this is like conversation. We're less thinking of like the performance. When you're just recording yourself, you are definitely performing.
So that might be.
So maybe that's it. Like removing the overthinking. Slowing down overthinking, but also B, focusing less on like that performance, but rather just because when you don't focus on performance, you don't think much of the like, judgment kind of
and
thing.
it leads to less overthinking.
Yeah.
So perhaps there's like some leftover overthinkings.
Yeah, but
which if
it's not like you're supposed to get rid of everything.
No. I meant like when you get rid of overthinking, the big chunk of overthinking, you have some remnants left. But when you stop focusing on that performance part, you get rid of more.
But maybe the big chunk of overthinking came from the performance.
Which is, I think, the thing actually. Yeah.
Because that's why when you just like during the congress itself, I was like very, very nervous when I'm first performing, and then when people start asking me questions, and I'm just like replying to the questions, and there was this one time when I just got so riled up because I feel like this person is taking the whole thing out of context, and I'm like, I do not think of the performance at all.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about subject matter, and that was when I didn't feel frightened at all. I literally did not have any more stage fright. I'm just annoyed by this person, bothering my presentation. So maybe it's also that.
Because so it's not that you before that when we got rid of that overthinking thing, it's not exactly we got rid of it, but it's just we overcame it.
Yeah.
So we no longer think about those things.
And sometimes they are still there, but you just do not focus on it too much. It's sort of like the compartmentalization.
It's still there are still other things that you should. So yeah, actually, that's a good thing. The focus on performance should be less.
I mean,
and you should, try to put on a good at least pay attention.
The presentation because that's part of presentation.
But then at the same time, not to.
The thing is that when you want to present something, are you focusing on people's perception of you, or do you want to focus on subject matter? I want to focus on subject matter, And if focusing on the subject matter makes you less nervous, that's cool. Yeah.
I think that's a good.
Yeah. We would place a link of the world's favorite medical doctor, WebMD, recommended treatments and because sometimes stage fright is very, very bad that you need proper treatment.
Yeah.
That can happen to people. We probably don't have that because I feel like we're coping fine, sometimes you really cannot talk, but but then sometimes for some people it's very, very bad and they require treatment, etc. But in general, just things like prevention, coping techniques, things like don't drink coffee and etc. It's we'll place a link in the description so that you can look at that if you have stage fright. And we hope that you guys if you have stage fright and etc. Get some tips or two to overcome stage fright or at least cope with it.
And it would be nice to hear how you overcame yours
or cope
with stage fright.
Because
we haven't overcome
the goal
stage fright
is
entirely.
not is the goal to overcome it entirely, or is the goal to just at least be able to present,
with that thing still existing, like our father did. Yeah.
I almost corrected it as do. He still does it, and I'm like, no, he's did. Sometimes I have that problem with these tenses, but yeah. So yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. So yeah, be sure to leave a comment or an audio message for us to hear your thoughts on our thoughts.
for your thoughts on the topic.
On the
subject matter.
On the subject matter.
Stage fright. Yeah. So yeah. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you guys again. Bye.
Bye.